I'm György Schöpflin. I'm a Fidesz member of the European Parliament, and I'm actually officially representing the Fidesz delegation this afternoon. So my grateful thanks to the media intergroup for its hospitality. Perhaps one word about myself. I spent 9 years working for the BBC. My memories are not very different from the ones that Mr. Horvath was suggesting. I was subject continually to both censure and censure. I can assure you that it is a fairly authoritarian organisation for those who work within it, not the acme of democracy that you seem to be suggesting. Hungary, Mr. Kavada, I agree with you, facts, completely. This is what we began with. Facts always have a context, and the past is part of the context within which facts are understood. It's not an alibi, but you yourself began with history. So I think the history of Hungary, relevant not only to ones to which you refer, but the previous 8 years of the left-wing government, to which I will turn in a second. Would you be good enough to put the clock back to 0? I don't want to overrun my time. Now, the Hungary that is arraigned here is not one that I recognize. It is the picture of another, an imaginary Hungary, one that has been constructed by reference to what the Hungarian left and the Western interlocutors say. This picture omits the one that reflects the views of the majority. It's decontextualized. It ignores the legacy of the past, particularly the dire legacy of the 2002-2010 left-wing governments. And you will be able to listen, I very much hope, to Mr. Pindrom on this issue. He's sitting there. I'll pass the word over to him with your permission in a moment. Now, to gain an accurate picture of Hungary, the so-called journalistic objectivity, it's necessary to listen to what both sides say. The left's failure to do this adds up to a resolute refusal to deal with the real Hungary, hence this imaginary Hungary, this dystopic fantasy, which is projected onto Hungary, which I think is reasonably termed delusional. It's an ideologically driven campaign, this 15-month assault. It has some very interesting features. It's crossed the threshold of abandoning the presumption of innocence as far as the Hungarian government is concerned. Instead, there is a presumption of guilt. This comes close to projecting collective guilt on Hungary. We don't like that now, do we? It has some qualities of a show trial. And above all, it seems to me, and this is what I get from below, from my constituents, there's a double standard which is evidently in operation. Why single out Hungary? Why single out the present situation in Hungary? It seems to me that if we look at the broader picture, and this has been very much the objective of this hearing, I wonder why it is, Mr. Pearce, not a word from you about the Leveson inquiry. I mean, if we're looking at the power of the media, which is what we're talking about, it is inconceivable that we have a hearing on this issue without mentioning the abuses which are self-evident in the United Kingdom. You will follow this, I follow it, I'm fascinated. It's a horrible story. Where is the accountability for the power of the media? If we're talking about democracy, that is. And Mrs. Fayol, who decides what a cosmetic change is? Quis custodiet? I'm sure you're familiar with this concept. Let me go on. I've still got a little time. I want to suggest to you that not only has this assault interesting features, but it also has some very interesting consequences. The assault is entirely counterproductive if we're looking at it from the perspective of the interests of the left. It has drastically weakened the Hungarian left. The public opinion polls are completely unequivocal about this. The strengthening of support for the government, I would say, is an unintended consequence of action. It's action that is not evidence-based. It's driven by ideology and wish fulfillment fantasies. What happens to objective journalism here? Where is journalistic neutrality? I spent time last week in Bosnia, again, this is my virtual constituency, and have come away with the incontrovertible impression that people are well informed. They do read languages other than Hungarian. Some Hungarians do. They are angry, they are resentful, and they're beginning to move into action motivated by their anger at what the Western media say about Hungary. It's noteworthy, by the way, that there's a growing realization among the new member states that the assault on Hungary is actually to some degree about all the members that joined in 2004-2007. I can cite you chapter and verse, but my time's running out. other unintended consequence is that those who feel resentful of what they see as an injustice are beginning to question those very European values in the name of which the offensive is mounted. This is very counterproductive. The assault on Hungary seems to me is beginning to create a breach between the EU 15 and the new member states. I see it's very dangerous. Finally, a few thoughts. Why? Why this anti-Hungarian offensive? Well, I haven't got time to go into all of it, but it seems to me there has been an intellectual failure on the part of the media, Hungarian media, Western media, to look at the sources properly. There's been an abandonment of skepticism and scrutiny. It means, I think, a movement away from enlightenment rationality, which the left is supposed to represent. There's also the failure to assess the unintended consequences of action that I mentioned. And I think actually there's also an increasing decorrelation between the European left and European society. The left is increasingly out of touch with what the people actually want and what their aspirations are. In conclusion, what we're witnessing, I would suggest to you, is a large-scale moment of collective irrationality. These assaults on Hungary have changed nothing that would benefit the left. On the contrary, the Hungarian Western left are proving to be the most effective generators of support for the Fidesz government. I remain perplexed. And let me urge you now to give the floor to Mr. Pintrock.